Since the Russian invasion of Ukraine in 2022, the war has entered its third year, while Russia has also endured more than 2 years of international sanctions. At the outset, economists, including the general public, believed that Russia's economy would definitely collapse. However, in reality, Russia's economy initially experienced a temporary recession, but it was far less severe than expected, and it quickly rebounded. Currently, Russia's economy seems to be performing quite well. In 2023, Russia's GDP grew by a positive 3.6%, and the International Monetary Fund, IMF, expects Russia's GDP to continue growing in 2024, with a forecast of 2.6%. It's worth noting that the IMF predicts that the GDP growth of the European Union in 2024 will be only 0.9%, and the UK's will be only 0.6%. How is it that Russia remains so resilient under sanctions? In a nutshell, the simple answer is that Russia has successfully entered its war economy phase. Hello everyone, welcome to the Curiosity Club. Today, let's talk about the topic of Russia's economy. Since Russia's full-scale attack on Ukraine, it has faced unprecedented international sanctions. These include being expelled from the international payment system SWIFT, which means global trade cannot proceed normally. The Russian central bank has approximately 260 billion euros of overseas assets frozen. Most Western countries have suspended Russian flights, closed their airspace, and ports are not open to Russian vessels. As for Russia's economic lifeline, oil exports, most developed countries have joined actions to prohibit the purchase of Russian seaborne oil and related oil products. Additionally, there is a limit of $60 per barrel for countries that have not participated in the embargo. It's worth noting that the current international crude oil price fluctuates between $80 and $100 per barrel. In fact, the sanctions against Russia are not just economic, they also affect various aspects including culture, technology, and so on. It's essentially a comprehensive exclusion of Russia from the world. It's precisely because of the severity of these measures that many international professional institutions and academic experts believe that Russia's economy will collapse. In the early 2022, the White House reported, experts predict Russia's GDP will contract up to 15% this year, wiping out the last 15 years of economic gains. But what's the actual situation? More than a year since the sanctions began to take effect gradually, Russia's economy did decline by about 7% compared to pre-war levels. According to data from the Russian Federal State Statistics Service, Rosstat, Russia's GDP decreased by 1.2% in 2022 compared to 2021. However, in 2023, there was a turnaround, with GDP increasing by 3.6%. The IMF recently revised their expectation for Russia's economic growth in 2024 to 2.6%. Domestic wage income in Russia increased by 7% in 2023, and retail sales in January grew by 3.5% compared to the same period last year. According to the Russian Central Bank, consumer sentiment is optimistic, with an increasing tendency towards large purchases. Considering the rather sluggish situation in most global economies, this performance is quite commendable. Although some people have questioned the data provided by the Russian authorities, regardless, Russia did not experience the economic collapse that people initially anticipated when the sanctions began. This unexpected phased result has led many to provide various explanations. In summary, it seems that due to the particular nature of its economy, namely being resource export-oriented, Russia has formed a relatively independent war economy in the wartime environment. Below, let's analyze a little bit this war economy. Firstly, Russia's economy has been gradually distancing itself from the West for quite some time. This originates from Russia's annexation of parts of Georgia in 2008 and the annexation of the Crimean Peninsula in 2014, which led Western countries to initiate a series of boycotts against Russia. For example, in 2019, Russia's direct foreign investment accounted for about 30% of its GDP, while globally, it typically accounts for 49%. Russia is mostly self-sufficient in the raw materials it needs, with low dependence on the outside world. Since 2013, Russia has been taking steps to gradually move away from the dollar-centric trading system in response to Western sanctions. The Russian central bank has been a major buyer of gold for more than a decade, currently holding over 2,000 tons of gold reserves, ranking 5th in the world. In early 2022, Russia pegged the ruble to gold, with 5,000 rubles exchanging for 1 ounce of gold. With such preparations in place, Russia had already initiated preliminary defenses against the international sanctions triggered by the invasion of Ukraine. In the realm of trade, particularly represented by oil, the sanctions imposed by the G7 and the European Union, along with the price cap of $60 per barrel, would significantly impact government revenues in Russia. However, in practice, many countries and companies needing oil have learned to circumvent regulatory sanctions. For instance, they utilize uninsured and unregistered oil tankers or accounting loopholes to engage in oil trade with Russia beyond regulatory oversight. Furthermore, many countries have not joined the group of sanctioning Russia, with India being a typical example. India buys cheap Russian oil, processes it, and then sells it to other countries. In 2022 alone, New Delhi's imports of oil from Russia increased by 134%, accounting for half of Russia's seaborne oil exports. During the same period, India's exports of oil products to the European Union also saw significant growth, resulting in substantial profits for India. In addition to India, countries such as Turkey, China, Serbia, and Bulgaria have also increased their trade relations with Russia. Overall, Russia's required goods, including domestic products and services, have been secured to a certain extent through trade with these countries. The outbreak of war, especially involving the world's second-largest oil-exporting country, Russia, inevitably led to an increase in oil prices, which in a certain sense bolstered the financial coffers of the Russian government. Since the start of the war, the Russian government has increased unprecedented fiscal spending. Military-related expenditures have tripled compared to pre-war levels. These expenditures include not only the purchase of weapons and ammunition but also compensation and subsidies for the families of those killed or injured in the war, as well as salaries for various service positions such as police, teachers, and doctors in the occupied territories. At the same time, the ongoing war requires a continuous influx of manpower, and some individuals have left Russia to avoid conscription, leading to a shortage of labor in the domestic job market. In order to retain or attract employees, companies have significantly increased wages. With enough money in the cash accounts of domestic companies and individuals, domestic consumption naturally picks up, leading to inflation in Russia reaching 7% in 2023. To control the overheating economy, the central bank maintained an interest rate of 16%. Another noteworthy point is that after the outbreak of war, the ruble experienced a sharp decline, prompting Russia to gradually implement strict currency and capital controls. For example, due to concerns about the impact of sanctions, international companies looking to leave Russia were informed that they could only receive rubles when selling assets. Additionally, foreign trade exporters were required to exchange foreign currency earned abroad into rubles. These measures were taken to ensure market demand for the ruble and maintain its exchange rate stability. So, in summary, you can see that war economy in Russia is like this. Firstly, the Russian government stimulated consumption by increasing borrowing and raising deficits, thereby distributing rubles to companies and residents. At the same time, through capital controls and pegging the ruble to gold, the ruble's purchasing power was maintained to a certain extent, allowing people to buy the goods and services they needed. Moreover, Russia itself is a major natural resource-rich country with a relatively low degree of dependence on external resources, enabling it to be largely self-sufficient. To address shortages resulting from sanctions, it engaged in parallel or downgraded substitution through trade with other closely connected countries. These measures collectively helped Russia navigate the challenges brought about by the war and its economic ramifications. However, it's not as simple as saying that there are no more problems ahead, and Russia can rest easy in this long-term state of war economy. There are still lingering issues to address. Russia cannot afford to accept defeat in this war, but victory in the war also comes with significant challenges. The reconstruction of the occupied regions of Ukraine and the maintenance of security will pose a heavy burden on the economy. Currently, Russia's fiscal deficit is at its highest in history, and it is reported that fiscal expenditures will continue to increase in 2024. With such lavish spending, the stimulus to the economy will likely weaken over time. The war has also led to brain drain and a disconnection from the world in terms of technology and culture. The negative impact on a country's national strength and economy from these factors will take even longer to manifest. Therefore, we still need to wait and see how things develop in the future.